Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. So I'm trying a little bit of an experiment here. And, I see folks are already in the chat. I see gaming artists in the chat. I see Ion Rocks. I see my boy Vince. Wow, and it's funny. I was talking to my wife a while ago. She said, is anybody even going to be online right now? Are people working? I said, no one's working. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Okay, well, that's not 100% true because I'm working. I'm actually taking a break from work. And I thought to myself, well, usually I draw during my lunchtime anyway. And my plan is to start having guests on my channel. And so I wanted to experiment with StreamYard a little bit and see how that went in terms of first going live by myself, just seeing what the setup looked like. And so far, it looks like it's pretty good. I can see myself. I can see you. Well, I can see the chat. Everything seems to be working well from a camera and screen standpoint. So the next step will probably be starting to work into having guests. But first, I figured let me just do it here by myself and see how smooth or difficult going live is. And it looks like hey, all right, it's working well. So let's see. I see Directs in the chat. I see Gaming Artist says, how you been? I've been good. Just getting through the start of the work week. I am fortunate enough to still be working. Like I said, my general MO when I'm working is I am fortunate that I can actually do my day job. A lot of it is design work. I can do a lot of that while I'm eating. So what I tend to do is I tend to work while I'm eating, and then I use my lunchtime to draw, because that's just how committed I am to making art and making comics. And I figure now that I am working from home, I can do what I have not done before and actually live stream while I'm doing some of these lunchtime drawings. And that does not mean that I'm going to live stream all the time when I'm doing these lunchtime drawings. Sometimes it is nice to just be completely focused and drawing by myself. And sometimes my work schedule will require me to be doing things during lunchtime, and I'm not going to be able to draw anyway. But I thought, for at least as a starting point, this be a good thing is just get in here, start working, and see how it goes. So, and I also changed my setup slightly in the fact that, generally speaking, I normally draw with my tablet in portrait upright, and this time I switched it to landscape. So when I'm looking at the full comic book page, it's smaller for me now than it normally is, but it's filling more of the screen. And then when I go and I choose to zoom in and get close, the detail stuff, I've got more space for that. Well, it really depends on the panel. In this case, it's a horizontal panel, so it fills it very well. And this is the page that I was working on Sunday. And at this point, it's really down to just troubleshooting now. The nice thing about drawing a checkered shirt is that it makes for natural cross contours. It kind of gives you a natural grid to help imply the direction of the figure and their forms. So let's see here. Gaming Artist says, when I have enough money, I'll buy one of your Kindle graphic novels. I appreciate the support. Everyone, money is tight right now. A lot of people either are art students, or people aren't working, or they're saving their money in case they're not working in the future. So I totally get that. Oh, hey, Lego Studios is in the chat. Good to see you too. Something I was going to tell you. On my Patreon, well, first off, I was going to tell you, I don't know if you're signed up for my newsletter, But in my newsletter, let me go out real quick. I don't know if I mentioned this enough. And maybe you guys are like, what? I've been doing this all the time. In my newsletter, if you go to newsletter.jeremy.net and sign up there, what I do is every month when I post my newsletter, the start of the newsletter is 4 pages of comics. So I always have just 4 pages. I've been running the older issues of Morningstar in the newsletter, so you can go back and read them that way. And if you go to a Patreon, patreon.com/Jeremy, on my Patreon page, I also post, instead of posting them once a month, I post 4 pages every week. Now, here's the thing. The new pages are exclusive to Patreon subscribers, but what happens is they're exclusive for a month. Then a month later, they become public posts. So if you want to read the older issues of Morningstar, you can read them on Patreon without necessarily becoming a subscriber. You can subscribe to my newsletter for free. You can also read it that way. But if you also want to support me, I would appreciate the support by, please buy a book on Amazon or sign up for the Patreon. So those are options there also for all you viewers that want to reach out and support and contribute to my ongoing creative efforts and helping keep this channel free for everybody. There's some bonuses for all you guys on there. Let's see. Lego Studio says, do you want to hear about my secret mission? Please go ahead. Now, I'll tell you, I'm going to come back and read your response in a minute because I'm about to show you a couple of finishing steps that I have here for this page. Now, I realize I haven't gone and flipped to the page yet to look at it and see if there's other things that I need to fix. But when I'm usually get to this point, what I will do is I will create a new layer. And I went over this briefly in this past week's video, but now you're going to watch me do it live. I will switch the color to black. Now this new layer, I will fill the entire layer with black. And this is in Procreate, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that I'm working on the latest version of Procreate. I go in and I convert this layer to hue. And basically, it's the same thing as putting a grayscale adjustment layer in Photoshop. So now I've got, instead of having to convert the letter to grayscale, I've got that there. And this is useful for when I print my sketchbooks of each issue. The sketchbook can just be there as a, then all I have to do is just adjust the lettering to go with the sketch version of the comic. So we've got that. And then the next thing I will do on top of that is I will create yet another blank layer. And there is a maximum number of layers when I'm working at a print resolution. I know that when I'm working 11 by 14, like a large poster size, I think it's like 13 layers is the max. These are the size of comic book pages at 300 DPI. So it's 10 1/4 by 7 1/4 or something close to that. So I probably got more layers available to me than that. But I know sometimes when you're running low on layers, you can get a little bit layer crazy. You're like, oh, wait, I'd never had to worry about this in Photoshop because it got to the point where you kind of have unlimited layers. What I will do is I will pick, I have a bright blue. It's a 180 degrees at 180 degree in terms of the color temperature, the hue. So it's like almost a teal, but it's like a very bright, vivid neon blue. I have that at 100% brightness and saturation. So I take this color and I will drag that over and fill the layer with that blue. And now instead of using hue, I will use vivid light, because vivid light really, for this particular color, it shows up really well. If I did the hue like I did with the other one, let me see, hue and saturation, color kind of gives it to me, but color leaves a lot of the dark, lets a lot of the gray show through. So I like using vivid light, because you can also use linear light, but linear light leaves kind of a bluish tinge, a bluish cast to it. Okay, so let's see. Going back to the chat, Lego Studio says, I'm going to go back in time and I'm going to save Anne Frank. Now, is that a secret mission that you actually built a time machine out of Legos, or is this a secret mission that you're going to do in your next comic or your animated shorts? And you're doing Lego-based animated shorts. Either way, that sounds pretty cool. I love that kind of optimism there. It's like it's the opposite of the story of going back in time and killing Hitler. It's going back in time and saving somebody who's a shining beacon of hope and inspiration. So that's an awesome idea. I dig it. Gaming Artist says, how long are you streaming for? And would you mind checking out some of my art? You know what? Feel free to either, I think you can send me a message through the link on the main. I'm only going to be on for another like 20 or 30 minutes. I don't have time to look at any art live, but if you want, you can send me a link. I still haven't set it up yet, but I'm going to set up on my Patreon. I'm going to set up a tier, a feedback tier where people can actually get online and get feedback with me. So I'll let you guys know when that's up. I said I was going to set it up probably at the beginning. But I plan to set up at the end of March, and then, apocalypse. It doesn't take that long to set up, but I've just been busy with family stuff, work stuff. Somehow I ended up being even busier in life than I was before all this went down. Anyway, Amar's in the chat. Ha! I really got to my wife. She was like, "Is anyone even going to be on today?" Everybody's on. So yeah, I'll be on for probably another 20 minutes or so, 20 or 30 minutes. But what I was going to say, Gaming Artist, if you go to the main channel, you can either send me, I don't know if you can send me a private message there or whether it has my email. But either way, you can just email me a link. And I don't know, if you've got like a page where you have your stuff posted, if you've got an ArtStation or a Dropbox or a DeviantArt, go ahead and send me a link there and I'll take a look at it. Meanwhile, so the last thing that I do with this page, and this I definitely know I showed last week because I remember it, is I will create one more additional layer. And that one I just fill with white and then just bring the opacity down to about 70%. So that way when I print it, it'll print at a low opacity on the board. Because it'll actually show up a lot more than I want to if I print it this, full blue, light. Okay. Wait, but I'm going to turn these off real quick because I still need to flip this page and take a look and check it for any errors or mistakes, just things that didn't jump out at me when I'm looking at it. Straight forward, straight on. So let's go over here. And I've been trying to get myself into the habit of flipping back and forth as I go, because it's an advantage you have when working digitally as opposed to my other process. But I'm so used to drawing a page all the way to the end, fixing everything I can, and then flipping it. So, baby steps. I'm still adjusting to this whole working digitally thing. So let's see here. What was I doing? Oh, I was flipping the page. All right. So a lot of times when you flip the canvas, a whole bunch of errors and mistakes that you didn't see before just tend to jump out at you. For the most part, I am actually pretty happy with this page. I don't see anything. Excuse me. I don't see anything that I really want to go back and change, and redraw, which is highly unusual for me because generally I want to change everything. The only things that I see that I'm concerned about, that I'm a little bit concernicus on, are hands. Really, it's, let me change back to red. So I'm going to undo these marks in a second. But I realize up here, actually, you can probably see it better if I draw it in black. up here, I never actually finished drawing Michael's fist, so I want to just go in real quick and finish that off. And then I noticed that down here, even though this isn't a particularly detailed panel, that these two hands, again, Michael's hands, just feel a little too scratchy. Like I didn't really get the sense that they really do feel like hands wrapping around, because like someone's choking you. You want to get that dramatic, like he's gripping these hands for his dear life because, you know, guy's trying to choke the life out of him. So let me just undo those marks, switch back to the red. And I'm going to start with the hands down here at the bottom first because I'm already on that layer. By the way, I'm also doing something a little bit different instead of using OBS to stream because, you know, again, experiment for streaming and having guests on, I'm using StreamYard. So since it's a different setup, I'm curious if there's any difficulties in terms of like if the audio seems at all different. I know that the camera, I think, is smaller than I usually have it in terms of the little visual thumbnail. So let's see. Yeah, if anything just seems weird, I'm curious. Or if there's something that, even if it's not weird, like, oh, this is messed up, it just seems different, I am curious what the differences are on this, because I have definitely watched other people live stream using StreamYard, but I'm not, I'm not sure from the user experience, being myself doing it, if there's anything that is different. Because it doesn't seem any different to me other than the placement. The other thing I'm wondering is whether I'm able to have multiple screen shares at once. Because usually when I'm drawing, yeah, I've got my camera on here and I'm sharing my screen. I don't know if it lets you do multiple screen shares at one time or if only one person can screen share at a time. So that is something worth checking out, because if my plan is to have people on drawing and talking, ideally, we'd all be able to share our screens. Or if we're not all working digitally, then sharing your camera would work fine. But let's see here. Kind of looking at my hands over there, getting a feeling for, maybe I just want to have the knuckles lined up along here. Let's see here. I don't know if it's picking up for you, but I can kind of hear the TV from the other room. I'm going to go shut the door to the studio. All right. Let's continue. So I am curious, because I usually talk to you guys on the weekend. What are your guys' creative routines like during the week? Because for me, my creative routine really is every day at lunch, just sit down, work on the comic a little bit. And then if I get the opportunity to draw later on in the evening, it's a bonus. It's a win. It's a gift, a little extra time. But if not, then I know I at least put in an hour a day working on my comic. And so a lot of times that is actually all I get. Today, I'm going to be getting particularly more drawing because my figure drawing class, which has been meeting virtually, is Monday nights. So I'm going to get to do that a little bit later this evening, which is something I always look forward to, although it does leave me a little bit taxing because after spending the whole day working and then going in to have class for 3 hours can leave one a little bit drained, even though it is something I'm excited and enthusiastic about. But for you guys during the week, how much time do you actually get to do any creative work? And if you're a writer, how much time do you get to spend writing? Let's see. I see Jordan's in the chat. He says, I wake up, eat breakfast, tape a piece of paper to the drawing table, press my face directly into it, and cry. Nice. I was reading it Anchorman style, like straight from the teleprompter. I didn't jump to the end. So it's like the end was like a nice turn for me. But you know what? Tears are great for adding moisture to your ink. If you're working in ink, it starts to dry up. Just cry right into the ink well. Just right in the bottle. Just get your eye right over it. Those tears, they keep the ink extra fluid, super luscious. Get some juicy, thick lines there. So, a little pro tip for you. You know, it's funny. I'm on James Gurney's mailing list for his Gurney Journey blog, and somebody had written in the other day about just the challenges of being at that point where they've been studying realism in art, but they don't quite, they still have quite a bit to learn, but they want to be an illustrator, and that their capacity to draw from imagination just isn't quite to the level of the amount of work they put into realism and actual, like, doing figure drawings and doing studies from photos and such things like that. And he definitely went into how a lot of times with Gurney, he starts out with rough thumbnails, and his initial concepts aren't masterpieces. A lot of it is like sometimes it's staring at some art that's inspiration, or looking to things outside of art. Not outside of art, but outside of illustration, looking at photography or film or magazines. So, these are all things that James Gurney recommended. And there was one thing I didn't necessarily pick up on in the blog, and maybe I didn't read it carefully enough. But I think when it comes to drawing from imagination, the first thing that a person needs, even before having the right reference or having necessarily the drawing skills, is having an interesting idea. Because when you're just drawing something out of life and you just look and see, it's you're copying, you're studying, maybe you're plussing the reality or you're changing it, adding things. But when you're making something up whole cloth, for me, the idea is the thing that fuels everything. Because if you have a good idea for a concept, a lot of times good ideas will beat the actual execution. And when you look at like memes, I mean, there's a lot of memes that aren't necessarily high art, but they're interesting, funny ideas, and they catch fire and people get excited about them. And maybe the person who started the meme will go and put it on a t-shirt and they'll be able to sell that. But even if you're not looking to make t-shirts, if you're just looking to make a piece of artwork, sometimes the idea can be more powerful than your actual capacity to execute it. People will, there's lots of artists who aren't necessarily technically complex or realistic in terms of their rendering style, but it's still, beautiful. And beautiful in the sense that the idea resonates. People connect with it. So I guess where I'm going with it is the first step for me is really coming up with it with an idea that's interesting. So it's more about, do you have a process for generating ideas? Definitely having a sketchbook to keep your ideas in, or a journal or what have you. Those things I think are very, very important. Those things are essential to the process, having a way to catalog your ideas as you create them. But I feel like the idea, I'm just repeating myself, but the idea to me supersedes the capacity to actually execute it. And once you have the idea, then you can chase improving your draftsmanship, finding reference, so that if you are somebody who just can only draw from photos, like getting models and getting them to pose for the image that you have, all of those things to me come after that. But that's speaking as somebody who is technically not that great and not a realist and makes up a lot of stuff. So maybe I'm biased. So going back to the chat. So let's see here. Okay, everybody got in on the artistic process, the artistic routine and schedule. So Amar says every day after work at 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. I work on something related to art. That's a good long chunk there. 5 hours of uninterrupted creative time a day. I wish I could clock the hours you do it. Like, I remember when you kept talking about like 16 issues of your comic you work on, I was like, that's ambitious as hell. I'm like, oh, it's because you're laying down hours. I need to up my game. I need to start putting in more hours. You're an inspiration to me, man. Derek says, usually it involves figure drawing, coloring, and shadows. I need to do more backgrounds, though. Yeah, backgrounds are a challenge. I still have a lot of work I need to do on that. Question. There is an excellent book. Jack Ham, the guy who did Drawing the Head and Figure, he's got a book called Drawing Scenery, Landscapes and Seascapes. And this book, to me, has been of great inspiration in terms of improving my personal work, in terms of drawing backgrounds and environments. I don't spend as much time with this book as I should. Like, I went through and like used a highlighter on a bunch of things I found useful. But this is a book that I could just sit down every day and do studies from. There's a ton to learn in this book. So if you don't have it, you might want to check it out. It's not particularly expensive. I think, yeah, it's only $13.99. I actually bought this book at Borders back when Borders was still in business. Back to the chat. Let's see here. I Am Rock says, do you use paper-like product for your iPad? Well, I do not. And the reason why I do not is simply the paranoia of wearing down the screen, because I read some reviews on the paper-like protectors, screen protectors that have a little texture to it to make it feel like you're drawing on paper. And the main thing people told me, or the main thing I read in the reviews, was it feels great, makes it feel more like drawing on paper, but you will wear down your stylus, the tip of your stylus. And I don't know with Apple Pencils if you can just buy a replacement tip like you can with a Wacom stylus, and I don't want to find out. Actually, I probably should look that up, because I should know if there's a point where I need to replace the tip and I can buy them. So I just made a joke of pleading ignorance, but now I realize, oh, damn, I really should find that out. But no, that's the main reason why I have not invested in any type of screen protector for the iPad. So I've heard positive reviews, like I said, about their effectiveness in terms of making it feel like drawing on paper. So I am happier with this set of hands now. Well, with this hand, feeling like this is super blurry when I look at this zoomed in. I really probably don't need to be zoomed in that much. Like just zooming out that much, that feels to me like I want it to. You know, the fact that I've got these little lines here of his hands digging in, trying to really break them from choking him out. The pinky finger is a little funky. So I got to fix that. Let me hop back to the chat real quick. Amar says, when I'm focused, at least 2 or 3 hours a day when it's a good day after work. Jordan, this is back to the the paper on the board and crying. He says, it's my special wash of misery. Rock says, laughing my ass off. These tears won't stop. We all know that pain. Amar says, I've been doing that all my life, so I'm always in my head. The only thing I may need is a reference to lock it in when executing it. Jordan says, I think a lot of people misinterpret from imagination as from nothing, but everything we think of is based on an experience, hence all the steal like an artist. I completely agree with that. No idea really just springs out of the ether, out of nowhere. I mean, for me, people always say, where do you get ideas from? And I think that question makes sense for anyone who does not actually engage in a creative process. But I think for all of us, we can't stop having ideas. That where they come from isn't the problem. The problem is we have too many, and it's frustrating because we don't have time to do them all. Because for me, all an idea is a thought. It's just a thought that happens to be about art. But that's all ideas are thoughts. And you say, well, then you ask the question, well, where do thoughts come from? They come from everywhere. I mean, that whole thing coming up in the first Ghostbusters movies where they had to fight the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, where before it appeared, they were like, try not to think of anything, clear your mind. It's like, just try to not have a thought. Try it. You see how far you get. You can't stop from having thoughts. And that's kind of how ideas are to me. They just keep coming. It's relentless, beautifully relentless. I'm glad I don't stop having them. But the having to pick and choose can be frustrating when I really wish that we lived in a world where I could just not have to choose and had time to make every single thing that I want to make. And let me hop back here because I know that I'm doing a bit more jawing than I am drawing, but you guys are very active in the chat. I mean, it's just funny the fact that I didn't even expect, like I didn't announce that I was going on the way I usually do, and you guys were just like right on top of it, like, what's going on? What are you doing? Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says having vivid dreams. And I skipped over the steal like an artist part. Yeah, I mentioned the whole Alice in Wonderland prints that I did, the Wonderland Nightmare series. All of that was based on a dream I had with Pennywise in it from the movie It. So yeah, everything. Dreams are very powerful in terms of a place where ideas generate from, where they spawn from, their origin. So Vince says, even with writing, I found that just writing a rough outline helps get the idea down. Then I can go back and apply various story structures to flush things out further. Amar says, this is back to the Jack Ham book. I have that book. I think you told me to get that book. I need to start doing video on backgrounds just to force me to do them more. You know what? That is one of the best things, is being forced to actually do something. Because for the longest time, like even when I go back and I redraw my bad figure drawings and things that aren't coming out well, I knew for years that I needed to start doing it. It was something that was recommended by my figure drawing instructor, Carl Ganas. And I had been studying figure drawing with him for years before I finally sat down and started reviewing my figure drawing work, not necessarily each week, but just on a regular basis, once a month at least, and going over the drawings and saying, all right, these did not come out well. What's wrong? What do I need to figure out and understand? What am I lacking? Why are these drawings bad? And I've said this to you guys a million times. The bad drawings are like a big neon sign flashing saying, you need to work on this more. You don't understand this thing. It doesn't matter whether it's a joint or some muscles or the attachment of like the shoulder or the hip girdle. If your eyes always look funny, then it's like, figure out the distance of the eyes or the shape of the skull. Anything that you're trying to draw, you know what? Beyond that, horses, any animal, cars, buildings, environments, anything that you draw and you're like, oh, this sucks. This did not come out well. Instead of being mad at yourself, it's just a neon sign telling you, get an art book, do some studies, maybe watch some tutorials or take a class on this particular topic. But that's all a bad drawing is a bad drawing is just showing you this is what you need to work on. We keep saying all the time, I wish I could get better. I don't know how to get better. I just wish someone would show me what I need to do. Your bad drawings are doing that for you already. Your bad drawings are your friends. They're there to guide you. They're there to point you in the direction that you need to go. For instance, I have been taking a class with Carl Ganas for years now on heads, hands, and feet, and I'm taking that class right now. And it stuns me how after years of studying this particular topic that my knuckles are so bad. But I think that's also because knuckles are a subtle thing. In comparison to major limbs, the knuckles, they just sort of emerge out of the hand, and they're prominent when you're making a fist, but depending on the gesture, maybe they're very prominent, maybe they're very subtle. And even if they're very subtle, maybe some of the knuckles are subtle and one is prominent. There's all these different layers and levels. And I think that for me personally, one of my big challenges, I'm just going to switch to a brush that is more precise. And up till now, I've been really trying to resist using a more linear, clean line brush because I was afraid that I was going to fall into the habit of basically just inking the whole thing digitally. But I do need a more precise line. The lines I have right now, or the lines I'm making right now, are so grainy. But yeah, knuckles are very subtle, and at a certain point, I have to move beyond just the general line art that I'm capable of and capturing the broad strokes, and I have to improve my capacity to draw subtle things. And I think that is one of the big struggles. That is probably my current struggle as an artist, is subtlety. Achieving it, mastering it, being able to turn it up and down as needed, as opposed to drawing everything with a bit of a sledgehammer approach, big, broad strokes. Like, I mean, that kind of stuff looks really cool when you're Frank Miller or Alex Toth. But those guys know how to put those bold lines in the right place. Let me scroll back through the chat here. So let me see. See, Iron Rock says you can, but I didn't catch what the context of you can is. But oh yes, you can. Oh, we're talking about the Apple Pencil. Sorry, it's a little bit back in time. So he says you can buy replacement tips, and Amar says you can, but they're not cheap. The replacement tip, the pen comes with 2 replacement tips. It's more of a quality of life luxury item. Yeah. So it's good to know that I can get replacements if I need them. But again, I've actually been okay with just drawing the surface and trying to make it feel like paper. That doesn't really bother me that much. Like the drawing on a sheet of glass actually feels fine to me. So I'm not happy with these knuckles. Just not. I'm not happy with these fingers, rather. I just noticed a little thing that kind of helps me conceptualize the knuckle is almost drawing it like a little bit of a fish hook. And I will show you in a second what I mean by that. So these knuckles that I am drawing here, I'll do this real quick because I can tell that we are almost out of time. Turn that layer off. So the knuckles that I was drawing, this simple box will be the palm. So let's say that the knuckle's coming out of here. The fishhook thing is I realized having it come from the palm and ending the first one in a little bit of a, see that hook? So that represents the next knuckle down. And so I realized just as I was doing this, I'm like, if I just end these in the little hooks, and then when I draw the next knuckle from that, to have that come down and hook in, down, hook in, down, hook in. The same thing here, down, hook in, down, hook in. So that's the whole finger. Hook in, hook in, hook in. Now, this isn't exactly the, and then I can sort of flesh out the volume of the rest of it. For instance, this is really just sort of the top plane of the finger. I'm not getting the side is right there. Same thing here. These are very rough. Drawn under pressure. This is exactly what the thing you were talking about, Amar, with the whole being forced to draw stuff. See, an alarm just went off. That means that we are done. I always set an alarm when I sit down to draw for lunch because, as you guys well know, the process of making art is so absorbing. I could easily just look up and it's like, oh, I just drew for like 2 or 3 hours. And then people are like, where the hell are you? Get your ass back to work. So I'm done. I got to get back to work. But that little fishhook thing that I just drew right there, hopefully that's useful to you. We'll see about possibly, I don't know for sure if I will be able to do a lunchtime drawing tomorrow. Depends on whether I have any meetings for work or anything scheduled. You know, Vince, I had mentioned to you about possibly getting on a stream. If you want, if I do one tomorrow, I'll try to send you a link early. And if you're able to hop on, we can see how this works with me having people on while I'm, while I'm drawing. So I know that I can have multiple people as guests. I don't know if I can have multiple people doing screen sharing. And of course, you're writing also. So you're a writer as well as a cultural, an editor and a cultural maven and journalist as well in the comics and pop culture field. But I do need to think about screen sharing for multiple people in the future for people who want to bring the drawings and sketching and such. Anyway, yeah, guys, super short stream. Thank you for popping in, though. I'm going to wrap it up. As always, go be creative. Oh, I guess I might as well. Got to plug my stuff real quick. Quick plug. So I didn't do it at the top of the stream, but anyway, you want to support this channel, patreon.com/GERIMI. Want to get monthly email, sign up for my newsletter, newsletter.jeremy.net. Buying books, amazon.jeremy.net. That's it for now. Now go be creative.